Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PACE Celebrates and the first ever presentation of our Changemaker Awards. Thank you so much for joining us. Needless to say, this isn't what we planned when we decided to hold this premiere event, but most of us are getting used to the new normal of Zoom calls and virtual gatherings. So rather than delaying the celebration, we thought we'd boldly step forward and take this opportunity to learn a few things. But first, let me thank our generous sponsors, Brookfield Property, New York Presbyterian, Trinity Church, Emigrant Bank, Allied Universal, and SL Green. Thank you all very much. PACE Celebrates was conceived as a way to honor the extraordinary leaders who join us in our commitment to downtown New York City. This is our opportunity to recognize the invaluable neighborhood partners who lead community-defining institutions and champion our residents and organizations. As you know, PACE has been part of a downtown New York City for more than 100 years, since we were founded in rented rooms in the old New York Tribune building. Today, we're home to 13,000 students, over 13,000 students, on our 3 campuses here in Lower Manhattan and in Westchester as well. In Lower Manhattan, we fill all or part of 9 buildings, including our signature home at One Pace Plaza, where I am right now. And we're very excited to be taking the first steps to our brand new 15 Beekman Street. So we know the importance of commitment to this neighborhood and this community. In a moment, I'm going to introduce this year's Changemaker Award winners, and we're going to have a dynamic conversation about how this resilient neighborhood is bouncing back and is going to continue to bounce back from this crisis. But before I do that, I want to introduce someone who perhaps more than anyone else is guiding our neighborhood as we recover from the pandemic and the economic downturn. Jessica Lappin, my friend, is the president of the Alliance for Downtown New York, and she is fully committed to ensuring that Lower Manhattan is a thriving and dynamic community. Jessica, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, President Krislov. It's wonderful to be with you, even if not as we had all planned. And I am Jessica Lappin, president of the Downtown Alliance, and we have been advocating for 26 years to try and transform the neighborhood into a lively and prime destination for businesses and residents and visitors alike. Our city, and especially this area, has weathered a lot over the last few decades. And everyone Zooming now knows how we were impacted on 9/11, the Great Recession, Superstorm Sandy, and now this pandemic. But time and again, we come together to rebound and rebuild, and we have already started to do that. I know before March, we had a lot to celebrate and still do in terms of our resiliency and success. Lower Manhattan has attracted some of the finest tech and creative firms to its office towers. It has become home to a growing dynamic dining scene, and we're doing what we can to help those restaurants survive. Please eat. And we were also on the cusp of becoming a magnetic cultural force in the city. It has been wonderful to witness the growth of PACE throughout these decades, from its early days as a commuter school to really an anchor, excellent educational institution in the neighborhood that's renowned for a lot more than finance and the arts and so much more, and is really doing a lot to bridge the gap in this country to help young people address income inequality and really reach their greatest potential. The honorees tonight are leaders who represent these institutions that have played a huge role in our success and will continue to do. We're really grateful for your dedication to the neighborhood to help us recapture that momentum. Juan Mejia and what you've done at New York Presbyterian to turn the hospital around. Reverend Jackson, who the minute he moved to the neighborhood and started working at the church became involved and joined our board and has been committed. And of course, our chair at the Alliance, Rick Clark, who is steeped in Lower Manhattan and has done an outstanding job fighting for all of us. And we're so grateful to have his leadership at the Alliance. So I can't wait to hear from all of them. Thank you all, and I'll turn it back to you, President Krislov.
Thank you, Jessica. And what's wonderful about this group is that we are all part of the Alliance for Downtown and very much committed to working together. And now it's my great honor to introduce tonight's panelists and the winners of Paces University's first ever Changemaker Awards. First, Rick Clark. He's the chair of Brookfield Property Group, Brookfield Property Partners, and Brookfield Property REIT, and Brookfield. And as you know, Brookfield is New York City's largest commercial landlord with a major presence in Lower Manhattan. He's also the chairman of the Alliance for Downtown New York, and he serves on the board of REBNY, the Real Estate Roundtable, the National September 11th Memorial Museum, and the Perlman Performing Arts Center at the World Trade Center. His vision and his leadership has helped make Lower Manhattan what it is today, and we are proud to present him with the Pace Changemaker Award. Congratulations. The Reverend Philip Jackson is priest in charge and vicar of Trinity Church, Wall Street, which has been a presence in Lower Manhattan since 1697. Wow. In addition to being a diverse and growing Episcopal parish, Trinity is an active grants-making institution, in particular supporting organizations that promote racial justice and work to end homelessness. Reverend Jackson is a gifted leader for what is arguably the anchor of all anchor institutions downtown, and it is our honor to present him with the Pace Changemaker Award. Congratulations. I'm going to call you Phil because we go way back. May I call you Phil?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. Finally, Juan Mejia is Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of NYP Lower Manhattan Hospital, our neighbors right across from Spruce Street. You can see where they are because it says amazing things are happening here. NYP Lower Manhattan is the only acute care facility serving our community, which makes it vital to meeting the healthcare needs of millions of residents, workers, and visitors every year. This year, it was at the center of our neighborhood's battle against the pandemic. For his brave, tireless leadership of the hospital at the center of our community, I am so pleased to present Juan Mejia with the Pace Changemaker Award. Congratulations, Juan. Wow, I'm inspired by all of you. Congratulations. What we'd like to do now is talk a little bit about where our community, our neighborhood has been over the past 6 months, where we are now and where we're going. So let's reflect a bit on the past. Let's start with the last 6 months. I know we're all trying to move on, but we can learn from history. And so let's go into that. None of us could have expected what was coming, but I wonder to what extent we were able to be prepared. Juan, I'll start with you. How did NYP Lower Manhattan get ready for what was coming? And how did that preparation help us? Can you tell us about these last few months?
Sure. Thank you, Marvin, and I'm very privileged and happy to be part of this panel. You know, so that's a great question. And if we go back to the end of 2019, you know, January of this year, we all heard in the news a lot of discussion about what at that time was called a novel coronavirus. And as we had discussions and we all learned about what was happening around the world, in China and Italy and other countries, our infection control team across our hospitals worked to really understand the virus, if and when it got to New York City, how we would respond to this, understanding the PPE requirements. We really had to train our team back in January and February on the screening protocols on how we would detect or even really understand if these patients arrived in our doorstep in the emergency rooms or in any of our outpatient practices. So we spent a lot of time doing that in January, February, not realizing that New York City was going to be the epicenter initially for what we now call COVID. And if you fast forward to March 1st is the first case that we had of COVID-19 in New York City. Shortly thereafter, within that week, we actually had our first case of a COVID-19 patient in Westchester, which is one of our campuses at New York Presbyterian Lawrence. And if you go from that date till middle of March, we all experienced a shutdown of New York City. This is when a lot of New York City shut down by about March 12th. In our hospital, we canceled all of our elective surgeries because we started to see a huge increase on cases, and we spent a considerable amount of time running our hospital under really emergency operations, which meant that we canceled all elective procedures. We had our command centers that were open. We are, as many of you know, we're part of a bigger healthcare system, so there are 10 hospitals within our system, and we truly worked as one system to make sure that we were allocating resources, whether it's PPE. We oftentimes had to move our staff around. And the first month, which is really the month of March, we had to change our facility to really accommodate the growth of patients that we had. For those of you that are in the neighborhood, you might have noticed we had tents on Gold Street, which is where the entrance of our emergency room is, and that really became an extension of our emergency room to allow for more capacity for patients. We did a lot of similar facility rearrangements within the building, within our hospital, to create more bed capacity, in particular to create more ICU capacity. We had to more than double our capacity for ICU patients within less than a month. And if we fast forward to our peak in New York City, which was around April 15th, we more than doubled the number of ICU beds that we had. We doubled the amount of ICU capacity that we had across our NYP system around April 12th. On that day, we were caring for 2,500 patients just in our hospital system. That's not all of New York City. And a good portion of those were here in Lower Manhattan. And I will say it completely transformed the way we see our care. We became a very flexible organization. And we'll speak more about where we were, but it really created a resilient team. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I'm very grateful for the entire team that works here in Lower Manhattan, not just our nurses and physicians, but our housekeepers who kept the environment safe, our security officers who kept our environment safe. And it really took an entire village that truly came together during this really difficult time to keep our community and our patients safe. And it was really something that we never thought would happen so fast. We really had to ramp up within a matter of weeks, so we thought we would have a lot more time. But because New York City was the epicenter, what I just described is very similar, if not identical, to what most hospitals in New York City experience. And I would say it's something that I would hope we never have to experience again. But if we do, God forbid, we do have the experience, and we have lots of lessons learned of what occurred in our hospitals between the months of March through, I would say, mid-May to end of May.
Phil, let's talk with you for a second. You had to look out for your own organization, but of course, you're very much committed to caring for our community, particularly those who are less fortunate. What happened here? Was the neighborhood empty out? Were there people in need? What were those months like for Trinity and you?
First, let me, Marvin, if I can I?
You may.
Thank you. People don't know this, but Marvin and I went to law school together. These many years ago, we were in the same class.
Phil's gotten a more elevated status in life than I, but we're still trying to do good work.
First thing I want to say is, after what Juan went through, I got nothing. I got nothing. Juan, you win. You win, and I'm just going home, man. It's just what you all went through and what you all witnessed to and what you did in this community. See, I don't just work down at Trinity. I live down on Pine Street. So this is my neighborhood. And listening to the sirens all night for 2.5 months and knowing that they were going to your place and that you all were handling it was moving beyond belief. Moving beyond belief. So Juan, I just want to say thank you and listening to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next, I'd like to say that I have not been at Trinity for 323 years. It's just 5.5. It's been a little short. But it was wild these last 6 months. I suspect that we will all be unpacking this experience for years to come. We will all be remembering things over time, that experiences that we had, things that we learned, and I suspect that, like I said, that will take some time. Interestingly, on March the 11th, 12th, and 13th, I was in London for meetings with the Archbishop of Canterbury, when my staff here was calling me. I was on the phone constantly with them asking me, you know, they're looking like we're going to shut things down. Do you want to shut the church down and our offices? Do you want to shut them down? And I had to finally make the call of shutting down on March the 12th when, and this is I think an irony for all of us, when we thought they would be shut for maybe 2 weeks. We thought it was maybe going to be 2 weeks and then we'd be back in. Well, it didn't turn out that way. Couple of things, Marvin. One about those in need. Yes, the need gradually escalated over the last 6 months, and you could see it visibly. We could see it, for example, in the COVID positive homeless men and women who were housed at some of the hotels around the neighborhood. You could see it in the ways in which the restaurants and other businesses shut down. And we could see it most demonstrably in our brown bag lunch program. We give out free brown bag lunches at Trinity Church 6 days a week. And people were coming, and you could see over the weeks, you could see the need go up. It was truly heartbreaking. And many older folks, people of all manners, but it was really heartbreaking. I'd say the other things my wife and I noticed being down here was there was a day towards the end of April, beginning of May, when I literally at noon was able to stand in the middle of Broadway at Wall Street, looking north up to the Chrysler Building for 5 minutes and not get hit by a car. And I took pictures of it. There was no one walking the streets. It was eerie beyond belief. Like I said, the sirens, the lack of people, you could not hear the subway running underneath. For us at Trinity, what we did instantly was we pivoted to doing our services online, which is where they've still been. We've been online. We usually do 5 days, Monday through Friday, and then Sunday services. We went online with everything and online with our meetings. So everything's been on Zoom. And the thing for a church that I'll tell you is the hardest, that I think has been the hardest for our community, is that in times of difficulty, churches always want to go out to the difficulty. We want to go out. Like for 9/11, we housed the recovery efforts for 7 months. I mean, we want to reach out to people. The difficult thing for this is that we were explicitly told, like all of us, to stay inside. And that was just sort of that juxtaposition of those two things was incredibly difficult, that we couldn't be on the front lines. And that in fact, to be on the front lines meant to not go out to the front lines. And it was sort of that tension was very, very difficult. And that Zoom and being online, while better than nothing, are not the thing. They're not the thing. I'd rather be in a room with all of you and all of our listeners. I'd rather be in a room with you, feeling your energy, watching your faces any day of the week than do this. But it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing.
In fact, Juan, you and your colleagues were telling us if we cared about the well-being of your team, that we needed to stay home, right? That was part of the message.
That was the message. And, for the safety of our communities, safety of everyone, we were telling people to stay home. And, back in March, we were saying, stay away from the hospital unless it's critically emergent. And it got to the point where patients with chronic conditions or with stroke-like symptoms, as an example, weren't coming into the hospital. So during the months of May and June, we were undoing that message throughout New York City because we realized that patients really weren't coming here because they're that scared of coming into a hospital. A lot of patients who would have normally come with serious conditions were actually getting really worse at home. And so that was, you probably saw a lot of campaign messages that every hospital had, including the city, saying, if you have stroke-like symptoms, if you have chest pain, the basic symptoms, you actually have to come into the hospital. So we had to undo a little bit of that messaging once the COVID numbers decreased around May or June around New York City.
And Rick, you were at the heart of the business community and offices and stores. How were people dealing, and what did you do to try to mitigate some of the challenges?
Yeah, so Marvin, maybe I'll start by just thanking you for your kind words of introduction and for bestowing this special award on me, and congratulating Reverend Jackson and Phil for receiving the award as well. And I wanted to echo what Jessica said earlier. You yourself and PACE are a big part of the Lower Manhattan community. You've done a tremendous amount for it. Next year, I'm going to nominate you to receive this award yourself. So,
but I got to give them out.
I know. Anyway, thank you. So look, maybe for context, I'd start for those on the Zoom call that aren't that familiar with Brookfield. We're a big global investor and an asset manager. Real estate is one of our largest businesses. We have a couple of $100 billion invested in real estate around the world, and are invested in a lot of the world's most important cities. But our largest concentration of investment by far is in Lower Manhattan, more than anywhere else. And we've been invested in Lower Manhattan for 4 decades. And this market has had its moments, and I'd like to think that we've taken lessons and learned lessons from those moments that sort of help us navigate through these things. A couple of things that I'd say we've learned from those past experiences, which helped us here, are probably worth pointing out. And one is the importance of communication. The well-being of our employees and tenants and partners and industry colleagues is important. And so, we felt it was important to sort of share information and communicate very early and often. Transparency is essential. So in late February and early March, we were working together with our tenants and others just to make sure we all knew who had come down with COVID in our properties. We worked together to come up with cleaning and disinfectant protocols to make sure that we were able to clean our buildings in those areas. This is before the governor issued his order for people to stay home. And then once he issued that order in the 3rd week of March, we started working together on return to work protocols, which kind of leads into the second lesson that we've learned over time, which is there's really no benefit for propriety here. It is really important to share knowledge. We could come up with our own protocols and not tell anybody, but what good does that do the community? So, we all really work together, even competitors, to come up with protocols. And I'd say the last thing that our organization, the entire organization was focused on was really, this opportunity to help the larger community. We're a big organization, and we have the financial means to help others. And what good is it to reopen your properties if the community is in really rough shape when you do that? So we've done, just to give you a couple of examples, Jessica Lappin, who started the program earlier, and the Downtown Alliance started a small business rental assistant grant program. So we worked with Jessica and the Alliance on that program, putting in substantial funds of our own and also encouraging our industry colleagues to put money in as well. We also created a partnership with Union Square Hospitality Group, so Danny Meyer's restaurant organization. His restaurants were all closed. We wanted to get them back to work, get those employees working, get their kitchens activated. And we worked with him and a group called Rethink, which is active in humanitarian outreach and helping to feed the food insecure. So we basically, provided meals to those that were in need. We also worked together with the Real Estate Board in New York on something called Project Parachute, which, we knew a number of occupants in apartment buildings would have trouble sort of paying their rent because there were so many layoffs as a result of COVID. And we wanted to give them resources to navigate the system and also aid in certain cases to help them, stay in their apartments. And finally, just the last example, and there are more. When we recognized that New York City was going to have to close down their summer internship program, we partnered with a group that we often partner with when we do developments in communities that sort of are below the mean income level, called Project Destin. And what Project Destin does is it takes kids from these communities and helps teach them real estate. So we created a virtual program with the Real Estate Board of New York. And those kids that would have otherwise had nothing to do this summer were able to continue their studies through this program. So, just sort of some of the things that I'd say the Brookfield organization has been involved with.
Thank you. And, listening to you, Rick, it reminded me that higher education actually had exactly that same experience. A lot of us were talking to each other. We were sharing what we were doing. That wasn't trying to get a competitive advantage, because part of it was we were trying to make New York stable and appealing to prospective college students and their families, and keep our own students. So it's interesting how in many sectors it sounds like we came together. So let's go to the present and essentially where we are now. We're reopening and or at least moving. Most of us are moving toward reopening. We've been open and at pace. Juan, let's start with you again. What's happening right now with NYP? What are your thoughts in this sort of immediate period? How are things going, and what are your strategies?
Sure. And before I get into the restart discussion, I'm just going to add on to what Rick and what you just mentioned. When it comes to communication has never been more critical, even for us as a hospital system. And ensuring that we're communicating and arguably sometimes over communicating to our staff, so that everyone understands what the protocols are. And for us, oftentimes the protocols would change week to week, depending on executive orders that were coming out from the governor. But also working with our peers around the city, whether it's other hospitals, Mount Sinai, Montefiore, a lot of the hospitals in Queens, we all had to work as one team to make sure that we were sharing resources when appropriate. And we never generally do that, but we had to pull together as a healthcare community, because it was really challenging for us to work separately and not as a full healthcare system. When it comes to restarting, we actually use a term at the hospital called renew, and we use the term renew because we actually never closed. And so starting in the months of March and of May, we started our renew discussions on what the hospital would look like. And part of it was ensuring that we were ready to reopen the hospital to the elective cases that we closed, all of the non-emergency cases that were not here. So a lot of that was ensuring that we had a safe environment for our patients, reviewing all the cleaning and disinfection protocols for visitors that would now start to come into the hospital, because there are many months where visitors were not allowed in the hospital. So ensuring that we had a safe environment for everyone to come back to was our #1 priority. And we invested a lot of time, not just in training our staff, but also reconfiguring spaces like our waiting rooms to make sure that the waiting spaces were socially distant. Looking at our lobbies to make sure that we had screening protocols for all of the visitors and all of anyone that was coming into the hospital, so that within the hospital we had a safe environment for everybody that was within the 4 walls of our hospital. And also working with the community and working and doing a lot of outreach, which at this point is still mainly virtual for obvious reasons, but continuing to do outreach so that we can work with local organizations, and if we can be an advocate or provide some of our expertise on how the community could continue to reopen. And we've done a lot of outreach efforts that we continue to do within the hospital. And so our goal today, I would say, is to communicate to the general community that it is safe to come back to the hospital. And going back right at this point, we're at very low COVID numbers. I will say last week, for the first time since the months of March, our hospital actually hit 0 COVID patients for an entire week. We're back to having 1 or 2, and we know that we're going to live with low numbers until there's a vaccine, but we are definitely at a point where we're not seeing too much COVID within our building. I think that's a reflection of what's happening, not just at Lower Manhattan Hospital, but really across most of the hospitals in New York City, because I think it's obviously because we're doing a really great job of maintaining low COVID numbers. So our job now is to continue really providing the care to the community that we have, which at this point is getting back to our elective procedures and all of the non-emergency procedures that we weren't doing before.
Thank you, Juan. Phil, what about Trinity? What's going on right now? What do you see as the needs right now?
Well, first, I want to say something too. Rick, I want to thank you for that summer program that you all picked up on. That was such a sort of unseen but tremendous need in New York, and that you guys stepped up on that. I just want to say thank you. That was huge. Marvin, a couple of things about supporting reopening our neighborhood is let me say that Trinity, as much as we are anchored here in Lower Manhattan, we actually do work all over the globe, and we've been partnering and helping support organizations and churches literally all over the globe during the pandemic. Down here immediately, I have a couple of priorities. One is safety, as Juan was saying. Even for us, it's safety and not bringing people back into church before we're ready. We've been warned, or counseled, advised that in the fall, between going back indoors and kids coming back perhaps from college, and regular flu season, that we may see some sort of uptick. So we have actually made the decision to keep Trinity closed until the end of November, the church itself. And then for our staff, we have a little more than 200 employees. We're keeping everyone home until the first week in January. So safety is number one. I sort of feel, you all, that keeping my community safe is kind of my call and job during this coronavirus period. So that's sort of number one. Number two is continuing to feed people down here and to provide other services, particularly food. As Rick was saying, I mean, food insecurity is not. This is going to get more serious. Is our feeling, and we want to make sure that we are prepared to help address that as it gets more serious. Not just here, but we've also been doing some feeding programs in the highest hit COVID zip codes in Brooklyn and in the Bronx. We've been doing some things there. So that's sort of number two, making sure that people can eat. And then number three, we've been working on reopening. When we're finally able to reopen our building, we've been working on developing partnerships with organizations down here in Lower Manhattan, two of whom we are proudest to say we are developing partnerships. One is with Pace University, and the other is with New York Presbyterian. We're going to be doing stuff with both of you two and your organizations when we're open again, to address both healthcare through both of you, but also education and helping kids. Because another big thing on my heart is that a lot of kids, especially low-income kids, are losing what they are predicting up to a year of education, okay? Let alone being on the track to take SATs and apply for colleges. We're going to do our darndest to, again, partner with some of our Lower Manhattan organizations to make sure that some of our high school kids down here online can get tutoring and can get other services. We also hear that one of the big needs of young people down here in our colleges and universities is mental health care. This has been stressful, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So that's what Marvin, that's kind of what we're thinking about and doing right now in the present.
Well, thank you. Rick, what are we going to do to get the offices open and restarting the economy? What do you see?
Yeah, so I'd say the overwhelming majority of property owners have already implemented any required systems enhancements or cleaning or safety protocols. And in fact, their buildings have been open. Ours have been open throughout the pandemic and remain open. I think as far as the economy goes, the issue isn't that people can safely return to work. I think they can if they follow the rules. But the issue is really is encouraging those people to come back to work. It took more than a decade to get Lower Manhattan on its feet after 9/11, and so that it became the thriving place that it is. And my concern is really, and I don't want to sound like a downer because I have nothing but positive feelings about the long-term future of Lower Manhattan, but there are almost 900 storefront retailers in Lower Manhattan, and half of those are restaurants. And, if they're not turning tables multiple times a night and operating at near full capacity, it's really hard for them to make ends meet, to pay their bills. I think the key to get the economy going, and these small businesses are the lifeblood of any community, is really twofold. One is, we need to encourage the government to provide subsidies in the forms of grants or loans, maybe a payroll tax, elimination or other kind of tax breaks that could be passed down to these tenants, but also encouraging people to get back to work. Part of the problem has been the message coming out of our political figure's office has been really good and on point. Stay home, wear a mask, social distance, and all these things. But we've gotten beyond the worst of it. It's far from over, but the truth is, people can safely go back to work. As a couple of people have said tonight, the subways are super clean. Maybe we said that before we went on air. People can go back to work. So, I think we need our elected officials to sort of change the messaging a little bit and encourage people to go back to work to support these small businesses. But, they have to be thoughtful about it and do it sort of safely. And I really think that's the key to getting our economy going again.
This is such a wonderful discussion. My pledge on any Zoom is to stay under an hour. So I'm going to ask us to be really concise on our last two questions. Well, one's going to be really simple, but this one is not so simple. What do you see in the future? What's your future for your organization and for what you see in our community? Juan?
Well, for our hospital system, the future, I could think about the next 3 months, and I think maybe think about the next 5 to 10 years. Over the balance of this year, our goal is to keep our staff safe, to keep our communities safe. And so the one thing that we're going to continue to talk about is flu vaccination. Everyone should be getting a flu vaccine because the flu season is upon us. When it comes to COVID, really continuing to develop our plans in the event that we have a resurgence, and we've spent a considerable amount of time this summer reviewing our resurgence plans, and we have them ready to go. We hope we don't need them, but if we do, our hospital will be here to provide the needs of our community. And the third, when it comes to middle term, when it comes to our staff, one of the challenges for our staff has been their psychological well-being. A lot of them experience a lot of things that were very emotional to them. So we've actually had a lot of between our pastoral care department, our therapists that have done a lot of work with our teams, because our teams experienced, a lot of emotional trauma seeing what they saw in this building. We need to be sure that our staff, that their well-being is cared for. So it's something that we've spent a considerable amount of time working with our staff. And as we think about the future, we will continue to grow our services here. So our strategy of growing and evolving to meet the needs of this community has not changed. We maybe have a little bit of a pause because a lot of organizations will have to pause and really maybe rethink of where we are in the next year. But if we think about the next 5 to 10 year plan, our plan, it will not change. It's going to be to continue to be the best healthcare provider in Lower Manhattan, to think about what services are going to grow. We have a lot of analytical data to show where we will be as a community in the next 10 years. And it's our responsibility to ensure that we are investing in this hospital, in this community, to be a provider for that hospital. And that has not changed. That will continue to evolve. And we are committed, again, to providing care for this community. So, you know, we'll see what the balance of this year shows, but we're definitely going to continue to evolve as a hospital, and really along with our healthcare system. We're a big healthcare system, as I mentioned before, and we're going to continue to grow along with the other 9 hospitals across New York City to provide care for this local community.
Thank you, Juan. Phil.
Yeah, the future I see is Lower Manhattan will only continue to develop. I'm very bullish on Lower Manhattan. I think that people will continue to move here and live here and want to be part of this as a neighborhood. So I think Trinity will. One of the things we like about the last 10 years, as this neighborhood has really blossomed, is that we're the parish church now for a lively neighborhood, and that's very exciting for us to be once again in our parish and at the heart and hub of our parish. So just being here, and we've been here for 300 years. We got another 300. We'll do it. We'll just keep plugging away. I think also when we open our new Trinity building, and particularly the program aspect of it, the Trinity Commons, I think with all of my heart that is going to be the hub of the sort of social hub of Lower Manhattan and the well-being hub, and I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm excited to be here. We'll come through this. This Lower Manhattan will survive, and it'll blossom again. So I'm okay with it. There.
All right. I like that. Rick?
We tend to take a long-term view on things, and successful communities and commercial centers happen around major transportation hubs. The Lower Manhattan Transportation Center is really superb, as is, although it's in need of repair, the transit system in New York City is extremely extensive, and it's a place that's attractive to some of the best human talent in the world, and evidenced by the fact that the tech companies just keep moving more and more jobs here in New York City, including Lower Manhattan. So, we're excited to be here. The global headquarters of our real estate business is in Lower Manhattan. It's not going anywhere, and we'll continue to be here and be invested in it. It's a great place. And one other stat I'll throw out there is 19% of the physical area is green space. Contrast that to Midtown Manhattan, that number is about 2%. It is a fantastic place to be. And we're very happy to be here.
Rick, if you had to describe what we should be saying to prospective tenants or businesses, what should we be talking about as sort of the community of Lower Manhattan? What do we need to be saying right now?
Yeah, look, the things that are important to employers are good modern office space, and we've got that and more coming in Lower Manhattan. Great transportation, great physical environment. Which the last point I made about the physical space. The millennials and the next generation are driving the world's economy, and these people really, this age cohort really enjoys outdoors and the things that Lower Manhattan has to offer. The last piece of the Lower Manhattan puzzle that's coming online post 9/11 is the Perlman Performing Arts Center at the World Trade Center. That's a couple of short years away from being delivered, and there's just so much to offer. So what's important to these companies is attracting the young talent, and this is the place that offers that.
And we hope to supply a lot of that young talent.
Yeah.
And not so young talent, because anyway, here's a fun, easy one. Many of us have been talking about what we're going to do when. Here's my pledge. I'm going to take all of you to dinner very soon at a place that you can decide. But this is what I want to ask all of you. More than anything else, what can't you wait to do downtown that you have once you're able to? I'm going to start again with Juan. And we can expand downtown, a little bit, but.
So I think, I definitely think, we're all excited of continuing to see the city blossom. Like New York City has been through a lot and will continue to be an amazing city. But I think that the great thing about the city is the restaurants that are in New York City, the arts, whether it's shows, whether it's concerts, those entertainment aspects that really make New York City what it is. I'm really excited to do that. And on a non-New York City perspective, I have not seen my family who are all in California in numerous months because it's really challenging to travel from here to California. That's not New York City, but just that human connection with family members is something that I'm really excited to get back on the calendar.
Wonderful. Phil?
I'm going to much more simply say, I can't wait to eat at Osteria della Pace in Italy. That's what I'm waiting for. Matter of fact, it was one of my favorite restaurants, and I noticed today that there's an outdoor Italy restaurant now. It's right outside on the side of Westfield, and I'm totally jazzed to go eat there. That's what I want to do.
All right, Rick.
So, like Reverend Jackson, I not only work downtown, but I live downtown, and I like to socialize downtown. And one of the great things that Lower Manhattan has going for it is all of these great things that you can do, many for free. So, for example, we're coming into the fall, and every fall at Brookfield Place, we hold the Best of the Borough Brew Festival. And so I'm excited to be able to attend those kind of things, events at Pier 17, events at Pace, and soon events at the Perlman Performing Arts Center. Attending those with friends, I'm really looking forward to.
Thank you. And I can't wait to see our students performing and doing all the things that they love to do. And it gives us all hope for the future. What a wonderful discussion. What wonderful leaders. I'm really inspired to have you as my friends and colleagues. And Jessica, if you can put on your screen, I want to thank you as well. See if you want to say anything. Jessica, are you still around? Okay, well, there she is. There she is. Jessica, oh, I've caught you in your house. Do you want to say any parting words?
No, I would just say that I really want to be invited to the dinner.
Done. Okay, we cut the deal. Thank you, everybody who's been on this Zoom. I think I'm going to make my commitment. And thank you to our sponsors, Brookfield, New York Press, Trinity Church, Emigrant Bank, Allied Universal, SL Green. Thank you to my colleagues who worked so hard on this. I don't want us to forget them, and I'm not going to name all your names because I'll forget somebody, but thank you all, PACE team, and everybody have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you at a restaurant soon.
Thank you, Marvin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks.
Great
Good
to
to
see
see
you
you.
all.
Bye-bye.